Australia is besieged, Cyclone Alfred has unleashed destruction, flooding cities, reducing houses to rubble, and displacing thousands. Roads become rivers, power lines severed, and suburbs become alien landscapes. It's not just any storm, it's a disaster. But how did it start? How did a minor weather disturbance turn into a monster cyclone? And most of all, what's next? Join us as we break down the harrowing journey of Cyclone Alfred, from its birth across the sea to the utter devastation that was left in its wake. Don't blink. This is a tale you have to see to believe.
These satellite images show the moment Cyclone Alfred U-turned and began moving back towards Australia's east coast. This final image here is from 3 p.m. on Wednesday, showing the cyclone headed towards Brisbane and the Gold Coast, where it's expected to make landfall.
Cyclone Alfred was not a sudden phenomenon. It started as a low-pressure area in the middle of the ocean, a mass of hot, humid air swirling into a force that was strengthening by the hour. As ocean temperatures increased, the storm was powered by the warmth, growing more intense by the hour. Meteorologists picked up on early signs, but they could never have imagined how destructive Alfred would prove to be. Cyclones are created when warm ocean water, usually above 26 degrees Celsius, evaporates into the air, producing giant clouds and driving strong winds. When the winds spin around the center of the storm, pressure is dissipated and the system becomes more powerful. In Alfred's case, this process took place very quickly. Within a matter of days, what had begun as a small disturbance had become a full-blown cyclone, putting everything in its way at risk. When Alfred landed on Australia's northern coast, wind speeds were in the stratosphere, breaking 93 miles per hour. The government sent out emergency evacuation alerts, telling people in exposed areas to evacuate. Although preparations had been made, however, no one was properly equipped to face the fury of the storm. As Alfred landed, it pounded seaside towns with unrelenting fury. Towering waves crashed onto shores, devouring coastlines and swallowing chunks of land. Winds tore through houses, ripping roofs off and shattering glass. Streets were flooded in a matter of hours as the water level climbed so fast that cars and buildings were pulled out of view. The devastation didn't end on the beach. The cyclone trekked further inland, causing biblical rains and colossal power outages. Electricity cables fell, cutting off thousands of households. Rescue teams struggled to reach pinned-down residents in houses as roads were blocked and structures and trees toppled on top of them. Houses were isolated and helicopters were the sole means of delivering assistance. This was not just another storm, it was a power of nature that transformed landscapes and lives. And while Australia prepared to face the repercussions, the enormity of Alfred's impact was only beginning to show itself. On the 6th of March, 2025, Cyclone Alfred struck Queensland, Australia, near Hervey Bay as a Category 2 cyclone with wind speeds of up to 71 miles per hour. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Fraser Coast beaches were worst affected by the fury of Alfred. Towering waves, the tallest of which stood at 5 meters, crashed over and over onto the shore, causing widespread erosion. Iconic stretches of sand vanished into the ocean, and beachfront buildings such as piers and lifeguard stations were badly destroyed or left in ruins. The ensuing deluge of rain that hit Alfred was unprecedented. There was more than 260 millimeters of rain within a few hours in Hervey Bay on March 9th, with flash flooding filling houses and streets. Waters were rising swiftly, stranding people, for whom emergency rescuers had to make numerous swift water rescues to reach the residents to safety. In other areas, floodwaters were more than 1.5 meters deep, which made roads impassable and separated communities. The cyclone's strong winds and toppling trees led to mass power blackouts. More than 200,000 northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland residents were left in the dark when power lines were knocked down. It was difficult for utility companies to restore the supply of electricity due to unsafe conditions and widespread destruction of the infrastructure. Ahead of Alfred's arrival, officials undertook evacuations of thousands of residents of low-lying suburbs. Evacuation shelters had already been set up, but the surprise and ferocity of the flood caught many people by surprise, with ensuing scenes of devastation as people tried to find shelter. The State Emergency Service, SES, attended more than 400 requests for assistance in Hervey Bay alone, which served to authenticate the magnitude of the catastrophe. The devastation caused by Cyclone Alfred has left the people to cope with the widespread destruction. Relief operations have begun, but rehabilitation will be challenging and long. The effects of Cyclone Alfred on the coast and coastal settlements of Australia were extensive and deep-seated, leaving a path of devastation that reshaped the landscape and tested the limits of resilience among impacted communities. When Alfred neared the east coast in early March 2025, authorities alerted parts from Sandy Cape in Queensland to Grafton in New South Wales. Seaside towns, including major cities such as Brisbane, braced for the coming storm, and sandbag sites were set up along the entire Gold Coast, Noosa, and the Sunshine Coast to fend off possible flooding. When it made landfall off Hervey Bay, Queensland, Alfred's wrath was unleashed by heavy rain and strong winds. The power of the storm caused blanket beach erosion, with waves up to 12.3 meters high. Such continuous pounding led to the destruction of huge sections of coastline, particularly hitting world-renowned beaches like Main Beach on the Gold Coast, which welcomes millions of tourists every year. The economic blow to the tourism sector was immediate, with estimates suggesting an elongated time for recovery running through into the high seasons. City centres were not exempted. Brisbane's most congested day in more than half a century, which inundated the streets and homes as massive flooding swept through the suburbs, was the record highest rain ever. The heavy rains overwhelmed the drainage, forcing the water to shoot up massively and surprising residents. Emergency services operated day and night, responding to dozens of calls for help as the suburbs grappled with the surprise floodwaters. The wrath of the storm was not limited to Queensland. In New South Wales, it was intense flooding in towns like Lismore that prompted evacuation warnings and rescue operations. The combination of heavy rain and storm surges caused rivers to break their banks, making the situation worse. Following Cyclone Alfred, the stricken regions embarked on a tough process of reconstruction. The central objective was the reinstatement of essential services, and power losses hit approximately 230,000 Queensland and New South Wales inhabitants. Utility staff toiled round the clock restoring ruined infrastructure, but the scope of the devastation resulted in the isolation of numerous towns from power for weeks at a stretch. Finances were a major aspect of the recovery programs. Cyclone disaster recovery payments by the Australian government for employees who lost their income from the cyclone reflected this. The assistance was a way of assisting in the realisation of immediate fundamental needs while victims recovered their lives. Recovery assistance was also provided to communities, and $15 million was given to northern New South Wales councils that were affected by the cyclone. The funds were used to rebuild infrastructure, help local businesses, and support residents to recover. The process of physical restoration was equally intimidating. The extensive erosion of the beaches needed massive restoration activities to re-establish the beach. Sand filling, the development of dunes, and the construction of protective barriers were among the works included in the activities. These actions not only restored the environment, but were also necessary for the recovery of the tourism sector that most beach towns rely on.
But the driver didn't take one load and go. Together with homeowner Dave Napier, they heaved and hauled, completely clearing the curb.
Rock solid, happy with that. That was a good initial clean out.
Others are only getting started.
The storage stuff that we've got, that's totally gone.
At the city level, there was a focus on rehabilitating homes, malls, and government buildings. Sweeping operations were in full force, ranging from the clearing out of garbage to repairing roads and opening up government utilities. Local volunteers and institutions were also deeply involved, supporting and assisting victims. The psychological effects of the disaster were also dealt with, and support and counselling from mental health departments were offered to traumatised residents whose houses were destroyed by the cyclone. Information, support, and solidarity centers were also established at the community centers, which instilled a sense of solidarity and resilience among the residents who had suffered from the disaster. While the rehabilitation process was intricate and gradual, the collective effort of government offices, councils, citizens, and community organizations was a testament to the vibrancy and credibility of the affected communities. The story of Cyclone Alfred was a poignant testament to the need for preparedness, solidarity, and the strength of the Australian people to counter the fury of nature. Cyclone Alfred was not only a storm, but a trial of strength, courage, and solidarity. Within hours, lives were turned upside down, houses reduced to rubble, and landscapes rearranged by the wrath of nature. Through all the destruction, though, an amazing tale emerged. A tale of people rising again, strangers as angels, and a country refusing to be broken. When Australia is rebuilt, so too will Alfred's hurt remain, beyond shattered pieces, in survivors' hearts. But from the rubble, new life will emerge. The roads will be paved over, houses will rise, and the beaches will recover. But the most cinematic reconstruction will happen inside, where hope is ignited, where neighbors help neighbors, and where the human spirit will not be defeated. Disasters can strike us, but the spirit of the people is never broken. If this moves you, do comment in the comment section below. And always remember, storms can pass, but we stand together.